I stood in Marcus's doorway, steam rising from the casserole dish, trembling in my grip, and heard my son say the words that would shatter my entire world. "Mom, this table's for family, you can wait outside." I froze mid-smile. The expression on my face must have looked grotesque, caught between joy and devastation, like a photograph torn in half. Behind him, seated around the mahogany dining table I'd purchased as their wedding gift 3 years ago, sat his wife Vanessa, their 3 children, and several people I didn't recognize. Vanessa's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a grin, more like a predator's satisfied smirk. "She's making everyone uncomfortable, Marcus," Vanessa said, her voice carrying across the foyer with practiced ease. "Your mother has always been too much." Too much. The words echoed in my skull. I'd spent 6 hours preparing this meal, Daniel's famous beef brisket recipe, the one Marcus used to beg for as a child. My hands ached from kneading dough for rolls. I'd worn my best dress, the navy blue one, I saved for special occasions, and applied makeup carefully to hide how tired I'd become lately. 68 years old, and I'd wanted to look vibrant, alive. Instead, I looked pathetic. My grandchildren, Sophia, 12, Emma, 14, and little Jackson, just 8, wouldn't meet my eyes. Emma's face had gone pale, her fingers clutching the edge of the table like she might fall through the floor. The other guests, whoever they were, stared at their empty plates with practiced discomfort, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of blood in my ears. "I don't understand. You invited me. You said—" I know what I said. He still hadn't looked directly at me. His gaze remained fixed somewhere over my left shoulder, as though I were a stranger soliciting donations, someone to be dismissed politely but firmly. "Plans changed. We're having a business dinner tonight. Family only. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something. This story isn't easy for me to share, but I'm trusting you with it. If my words are reaching you right now, please hit that like button and subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're hearing this. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know someone out there understands what it feels like when your own blood turns cold." My name is Paula Sadler. I'm 68 years old, and until that November evening, I believed I'd done everything right. 23 years ago, my husband Daniel died on a construction site. A cable snapped during a routine job, and just like that, the man who'd built our life together was gone. He left me with 3 children. Marcus was 19, Rebecca 16, Tyler just 12, and a mountain of grief so high I couldn't see the top. But I climbed it anyway. I worked double shifts as a nurse at County General, the graveyard hours nobody wanted. I attended Marcus's college orientation on 2 hours of sleep, listened to Rebecca cry about her prom date, while my own eyes burned with exhaustion, sat through Tyler's middle school plays fighting to keep my head upright. I sold my mother's antique jewelry collection to cover Marcus's tuition when his scholarships fell short. I postponed surgery for my own herniated disc, so Rebecca could have the wedding she dreamed of. I became a machine designed for sacrifice, fueled by love and the desperate hope that if I just gave enough, worked hard enough, loved fiercely enough, my children would grow into good people who remembered what I'd done, who valued it, who valued me. Standing in that doorway, casserole dish growing heavier by the second, I realized I'd been wrong about everything. I'll leave this in the kitchen," I stammered, moving forward on autopilot. "Don't bother." Vanessa's voice stopped me cold. She'd stood up now, her designer dress, the kind I could never afford, even after a lifetime of nursing, rustling softly. "We've already ordered catering, from that new French place downtown. Your cooking is sweet, Paula, but it's a bit rustic for tonight's guests." Rustic. Another word that meant worthless. I looked past her to Marcus, silently begging him to intervene, to tell his wife she'd gone too far, to remember who'd raised him, who'd sacrificed everything so he could become the successful financial consultant, sitting in that expensive house wearing that expensive suit. He adjusted his tie and said nothing. "Okay," I heard myself say. The word came out broken, fragmented. "Okay, I'll I'm sorry for intruding. I turned toward the door, my vision blurring. The casserole dish slipped slightly in my grip, and I clutched it tighter, holding on to it like a lifeline, like proof I'd tried, like evidence I'd cared. Grandma. Emma's voice, barely a whisper. I glanced back. She'd half risen from her chair, her young face twisted with anguish and confusion, but Vanessa's hand landed on her shoulder, pressing her back down with gentle but unmistakable force. Stay seated, darling. Grandma was just leaving. I drove home in silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the suffocating kind, the kind that presses against your chest until breathing becomes a conscious effort. My house, the small two-bedroom ranch I'd moved to after selling the family home to help Tyler start his landscaping business, felt cavernous and empty. I set the casserole on the counter, staring at it for a long moment before covering it with foil and sliding it into the refrigerator next to yesterday's leftovers. I'd eat it alone for the next week, tasting failure with every bite. That's when I noticed my purse, sitting on the passenger seat of my car. I didn't remember bringing it inside, but there it was, slightly open. Inside, tucked between my wallet and reading glasses, lay a sealed envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. The handwriting was Emma's, careful and precise, the way I'd taught her when she was 6 years old and learning cursive. Grandma, I heard them planning something. They're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. I'm scared for you. I love you. Emma. I read it 3 times before the words fully registered. The humiliation I'd just endured wasn't spontaneous cruelty. It was calculated, planned, and according to my granddaughter's trembling handwriting, it was only the beginning. I sank onto my couch, still clutching the note, and felt the first crack appear in the foundation of denial I'd been living on. My son hadn't suddenly become cruel. He'd been working up to this, building toward something bigger, and tonight's dinner had been a test. A test I'd apparently failed by simply existing. Outside, November darkness pressed against my windows. Inside, something shifted in my chest, not quite anger yet. I wasn't ready for that, but maybe the first whisper of it, the acknowledgement that I'd been wronged, that this pain wasn't something I'd earned or deserved. I sat there until midnight, Emma's note resting on my lap, and tried to imagine what kind of planning required a lawyer. What kind of meeting excluded the person being discussed? What kind of family betrayed their mother in favor of catering from a French restaurant? By the time I finally stood and walked to my bedroom, my tears had dried. Something harder had taken their place, something cold and clear and focused. If they were planning something, I needed to know what. And if my own son was meeting with lawyers about me without my knowledge, then maybe it was time I did the same. 23 years. That's how long I'd been both mother and father to 3 children who'd never asked to lose their parent. That's how long I'd been running on fumes, pretending strength, sacrificing pieces of myself, until I'd almost forgotten who Paula Sadler had been before grief turned her into a survival machine. Daniel's death hadn't been dramatic or cinematic. No final words, no goodbye kiss, no chance to tell him I loved him one last time. Just a phone call at 2:47 in the afternoon from a supervisor whose voice shook with the weight of delivering terrible news. There's been an accident. You need to come to County General immediately. I'd been folding laundry when the phone rang. Marcus's college acceptance letter sat on the kitchen table. Rebecca was at school. Tyler was at a friend's house learning to play guitar. Normal life, ordinary moments, the kind you don't appreciate until they're gone forever. By 3:15, I was a widow. By 3:30, I understood that grief was a luxury I couldn't afford. The life insurance policy helped, but not nearly as much as people assumed. After funeral costs and clearing Daniel's remaining debts, I had enough to keep us afloat for maybe 6 months if I was careful. After that, survival meant work, endless work, the kind that ground you down to dust but kept your children fed. I took the night shift at County General because it paid more. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week, sometimes 6 when overtime was available. I'd come home as the sun rose, sleep until 2 in the afternoon, wake up and pretend to have energy I didn't possess, attend parent-teacher conferences, cook dinner, help with homework, listen to teenage heartbreak and childhood fears, and all the normal crises that don't stop just because one parent is gone. Marcus graduated high school with honors. His college fund, the one Daniel and I had been building since he was born, covered exactly one semester. I sold my mother's jewelry, Victorian pieces she'd inherited from her grandmother, worth far more than I'd realized, to cover the rest. When Marcus asked where I'd found the money, I lied. Insurance adjustment came through. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Just focus on your studies. He never questioned it. Maybe he didn't want to know. Rebecca wanted a wedding, not a small backyard affair, but a real celebration, the kind with a photographer and a band and a dress that cost more than my car. Her fiancé's family had money, and she was terrified of looking poor by comparison, of being judged, of not measuring up. Mom, I can't get married in someone's living room, she'd sobbed. Brad's parents are already looking down on me. Please. I'd been scheduled for surgery on my back. Years of nursing had destroyed my spine, and a herniated disc was causing pain that sometimes made it hard to walk. But the surgery wasn't life-threatening, just quality of life improving. It could wait. Rebecca's wedding couldn't. I postponed the surgery and wrote the check. $22,000 I didn't have, taken from a home equity line I'd opened quietly, desperately. Rebecca had her perfect day. I smiled through every photo, hiding how much it hurt to stand for extended periods. Tyler wanted to start a landscaping business after high school. He'd always been good with plants, with growing things, turning dead yards into gardens. He had drive and vision, and absolutely no capital. Banks won't loan to someone my age with no business history, he'd explained, defeated. I guess I'll just get a job somewhere, work for someone else. I couldn't bear the resignation in his voice, so I took out a second mortgage on the house, the one Daniel had built with his own hands during our first years of marriage. The bank approved $30,000. I gave it all to Tyler, watching his face light up with hope and possibility. I'll pay you back, Mom. Every penny. I promise. I know you will, baby. He'd paid back about $4,000 before life got expensive, and the payments became irregular, then stopped. I never mentioned it. What kind of mother demands repayment when her child is struggling? 3 children, 3 sacrifices that seemed meaningful at the time, investments in futures I'd never benefit from, but took pride in creating anyway. Marcus became a financial consultant, making more money in a month than I'd made in a year. Rebecca married into comfort, her children attending private schools, her life cushioned by wealth. Tyler's business grew slowly but steadily, enough to support himself and eventually his girlfriend, enough to make me proud. And I remained in my small house, working night shifts, until my body finally forced me to retire at 65, living on Social Security and a modest pension, driving a car older than Emma, wearing dresses I'd owned for a decade. But I had one thing left, one piece of Daniel that nobody could take: the cabin. He'd built it himself on a lot. His father had left him, a small piece of land near Ashford Lake, back when the area was rural and worthless. For 5 years, every weekend, every vacation day, Daniel had worked on that cabin. Framing, plumbing, electrical work, all of it learned through trial and error and sheer determination. "This is for us, Paula," he'd say. Sawdust in his hair, exhaustion in his eyes. "For our family, someplace permanent, someplace that'll outlast us." He'd finished it the summer before he died. We'd spent exactly 4 weekends there as a family, 4 perfect weekends of fishing and campfires, and the kind of peace you can't buy. After his death, I couldn't bear to visit for years, but eventually, grief softened into bittersweet memory, and the cabin became my sanctuary. The place I went when nursing shifts destroyed my soul, when loneliness threatened to swallow me whole, when I needed to feel close to Daniel again. Over the years, the area changed. Developers discovered Ashford Lake. Wealthy people built vacation homes. Property values skyrocketed. My modest cabin, sitting on 2 acres of lakefront land, became worth over $800,000, according to recent appraisals. I'd always planned to leave it to my children equally, 1/3 each, a legacy from their father, proof he'd thought about their future even when he couldn't be there to see it. But lately, Marcus had been asking questions, casual at first, then increasingly direct. "Mom, have you thought about updating your will? Mom, that cabin just sits empty most of the year, seems wasteful. Mom, property taxes on that place must be killing you. Have you considered selling? I deflected every conversation, insisting I wanted to consult with my own attorney first, make sure everything was fair and legal and protected. Marcus had grown cold after that, his visits becoming rare, his phone calls perfunctory. I'd thought he was just busy. 3 days after the dinner incident, I discovered exactly how busy he'd been. I was cleaning out old files when I found it. A real estate brochure for lakefront properties in the Ashford area, featuring professional photos of my cabin. Not photos I'd taken or authorized. Someone had been on my property, staging it, preparing it for sale. On the back in handwriting, I recognized as Marcus's, was a note developer offering $750K cash. Closing in 30 days. Split with R, cut out T. Mom doesn't need to know details. Just get her signature on transfer. My hands went numb. The paper fluttered to the floor. He wasn't planning to inherit the cabin. He was planning to steal it while I was still alive. And he intended to cut his own brother out of the proceeds entirely. I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by 23 years of documents and memories, and felt the last remnants of denial crumble away. My son wasn't just cruel or thoughtless. He was calculating, methodical. And he saw me not as a person, not even as an obstacle, but as a signature to be obtained through manipulation or force. That night, I barely slept. Emma's note echoed in my mind. They're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. Tomorrow was today, and I had no idea what legal trap was being constructed around me, what documents were being prepared, what lies were being formalized into official language. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I didn't act soon, I would lose everything Daniel had built for us. Everything he'd promised would outlast him. I couldn't let that happen. At 7 a.m., I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would tell me the truth, even if I didn't want to hear it. Catherine. My voice cracked on her name. It's Paula Sadler. I need your help. I think my son is trying to steal from me, and I don't know how to stop him. Catherine Chen had been a nursing colleague 20 years ago, before she'd gone to law school and built a practice specializing in estate planning. We'd stayed in touch loosely, exchanging Christmas cards, occasional lunch dates when our schedules aligned. Paula, her voice sharpened with concern. Tell me everything. So I did. 3 days after the dinner incident, my phone rang at 9 a.m. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, I considered not answering. Let him leave a voicemail. Let him wonder if I'd finally given up on him. But I answered. Old habits die hard. Mom, his voice carried that false brightness people use when they're about to ask for something. How are you feeling? I've been worried about you. Liar. He hadn't called to check on me since the dinner, hadn't apologized, hadn't acknowledged what Vanessa had said or how he'd stood silent while his wife humiliated me. I'm fine, Marcus. I kept my tone neutral, giving him nothing. Good. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Can you come over today? Around 2? The whole family will be here. The whole family. Those words should have brought comfort. Instead, they triggered alarm bells. What's this about? Just some family business we need to discuss. Estate planning stuff. Nothing to worry about, but it's time we got everything organized properly. You know, for your peace of mind. My peace of mind. As though any of this was for my benefit. I see. Will Rebecca and Tyler be there too? Of course. His answer came too quickly. Everyone needs to be involved in these decisions. I agreed to come, ended the call, and immediately dialed Catherine. He's making his move. I told her, family meeting today, at 2. He says it's about estate planning. Catherine's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Paula, don't sign anything. I don't care what they tell you, what pressure they apply, what emotions they manipulate. Do not put your signature on any document. Do you understand? Yes. I'm serious. If they push, tell them you need time to review everything with your own attorney. If they push harder, leave, just walk out. Catherine, you're scaring me. Good, you should be scared. Estate planning meetings don't happen in someone's living room with a family lawyer present. They happen in law offices with independent counsel. Whatever Marcus has planned, it's not in your best interest. I arrived at Marcus's house at 2 o'clock, exactly. My stomach churned with anxiety, but I kept my face calm, neutral, giving nothing away. The door opened before I could knock. Vanessa stood there, her expression carefully arranged into something resembling welcome. "Paula, come in." The living room was full. Marcus and Vanessa, of course. Rebecca sat on the love seat, her husband Brad beside her, both looking uncomfortable. Tyler sat in a chair near the window, his usual easy smile replaced with confusion. And in the center of it all, seated in Daniel's old armchair, the one I'd given to Marcus years ago, sat a man in an expensive suit, his briefcase open on the coffee table, documents arranged in neat stacks. "Mom, this is Richard Pemberton," Marcus said, gesturing to the stranger. "He's an attorney who specializes in elder care and estate planning. We asked him to help us put together a comprehensive plan for your future." My future, discussed and decided without my presence or consent. I sat in the only remaining chair, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Tyler looked as confused as I felt. Rebecca wouldn't meet my gaze. Marcus and Vanessa wore matching expressions of concern so false, it was almost insulting. Richard Pemberton smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Mrs. Sadler, your family has asked me here today because they're worried about you. They've noticed some concerning changes lately. Forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty managing your affairs. They want to make sure you're protected and cared for as you enter this new phase of life." Forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty managing my affairs. I'd been called many things in 68 years, but never incompetent. "I'm not sure I understand," I said carefully. "What concerning changes?" Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Mom, you forgot Tyler's birthday last month. You called Rebecca by your sister's name 3 times over the summer. Last week, you mentioned paying bills twice, like you couldn't remember if you'd done it already." Every accusation was technically true and completely meaningless. I'd forgotten Tyler's birthday because I'd been dealing with a kidney infection. I called Rebecca by my sister's name because they have the same laugh, and I'd been thinking about my sister who'd recently been diagnosed with cancer. I'd mentioned bills twice because I was confirming I'd paid them, not because I'd forgotten. But Marcus presented each incident as evidence of decline, building a case against me using my own life. "I'm 68 years old," I said quietly. "Everyone forgets things occasionally. That doesn't mean I'm incompetent." "No one's saying you're incompetent," Vanessa interrupted, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We're just saying you need help, support, and legally, we need to make sure everything is in order before things get worse." Before things get worse, as though my decline was inevitable, already in progress, just waiting to accelerate. Richard Pemberton pulled documents from his briefcase. "I've prepared several forms that will help your family assist you. First, a durable power of attorney, giving Marcus authority to make financial decisions on your behalf. Second, a healthcare proxy, allowing Vanessa to make medical decisions if you're unable. And third, we have some preliminary information about assisted living facilities in the area." Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. I don't need assisted living. I don't need anyone making decisions for me. I'm managing perfectly well on my own. "Mom, be reasonable." Marcus's mask was slipping, frustration bleeding through. "That cabin is falling apart because you can't maintain it properly. Your house needs repairs you keep putting off. You're living on a fixed income that isn't sufficient. We're trying to help you. By taking away my autonomy? By protecting you from yourself." The room fell silent. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca wiped at her eyes, tears forming but not falling. Vanessa's expression had hardened into something cold and calculating. "Mrs. Sadler," Richard Pemberton said, his voice taking on a sharper edge, "your family is offering you a graceful solution. If you refuse their help, other options exist. Options that are far less pleasant. A competency hearing, for example, where a judge determines whether you're capable of managing your own affairs. That process can be lengthy, expensive, and public. Surely you'd prefer to handle this privately, within the family." A threat, barely veiled but unmistakable. Sign over my power, or they'd take it by force through the courts. I looked at my children, searching for an ally. Tyler's face had gone pale, his eyes darting between Marcus and me like he couldn't process what was happening. Rebecca stared at her hands, silent, complicit through inaction. And Marcus. Marcus looked at me like I was a problem to solve, an obstacle preventing him from accessing something he'd already decided belonged to him. I need time, I said, standing on shaky legs. I need to review these documents with my own attorney before I sign anything. Mom. No, I cut Marcus off, my voice stronger now, fueled by adrenaline and fear and anger that was finally starting to burn through the shock. You don't get to ambush me in your living room with a lawyer I've never met and demand I sign away my rights. If you're truly concerned about my welfare, you'll give me time to seek independent counsel, unless this isn't actually about protecting me. Marcus stood too, and for a moment, we faced each other across the coffee table. When had he grown taller than me? When had his eyes learned to look through me instead of at me? You're being selfish, he said, his voice low and cold. That cabin is wasting away while you play sentimental. Dad would want us to benefit from it. He'd want you properly cared for, not struggling alone, pretending you're fine when everyone can see you're not. Your father built that cabin for our family, not for sale. Our family needs the money more than we need a rotting structure in the woods. I walked to the door, my hands trembling so badly I could barely grip my purse. Behind me, I heard Vanessa's voice, pitched just loud enough to carry. She'll come around. Old people always do when they realize they have no choice. I drove home through tears that blurred the road into watercolor smudges, parked in my driveway, sat in silence until my hands stopped shaking. Then I walked inside and found Emma waiting on my porch steps. She'd been crying, her face blotchy and swollen. When she saw me, she ran forward and wrapped her arms around my waist, holding on like I might disappear. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I held her, stroking her hair, making soothing sounds, while my own heart shattered into smaller and smaller pieces. It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. I heard them. Emma pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I've been recording their conversations for weeks. I didn't know what else to do. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and played the first audio file. Marcus's voice, clear and cold. The key is documenting every instance of forgetfulness or confusion. We build a pattern, establish decline, and then the competency petition becomes a formality. Vanessa's response, what about Tyler? He won't go along with this. Tyler's weak. We don't need him. Rebecca will stay quiet if we cut her in. Once we have power of attorney, we liquidate the cabin, split the proceeds between you, me, and Rebecca. Tyler doesn't need to know until it's done. And your mother? There's a state facility outside Harrisburg. Medicaid will cover it once we've transferred her assets into our names. She'll be taken care of, just efficiently. The recording continued, but I'd stopped listening. Emma played clip after clip, weeks of documented conspiracy. My son planning to steal from me, lie to his brother, warehouse me in a state facility where Medicaid funding meant minimal care and maximum neglect. When the recordings finally ended, I sat in silence on my porch steps, my granddaughter beside me, and felt something shift inside my chest. The grief was still there, the shock, the pain, the mother's heartbreak of being betrayed by the child she'd sacrificed everything for. But underneath it, growing stronger with every breath, was something else. Rage. Cold, clear, focused rage. Emma, I said quietly, I need you to keep recording. Can you do that? Can you keep being my eyes and ears? She nodded, her young face set with determination. I won't let them hurt you, Grandma. I won't. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first to Catherine, telling her everything. The second to a number Catherine provided. Mrs. Sadler. The voice was male, calm, professional. My name is James Morrison. I'm a private investigator, specializing in family fraud cases. Catherine Chen asked me to call you. When can we meet? I looked at Emma's phone, at the pile of documents Richard Pemberton had left with me, at the life I'd built through decades of sacrifice, now threatened by the very people I'd built it for. Tomorrow morning, I said. The sooner the better. I think my son is trying to destroy me, and I need to know exactly how deep this goes. I'll find out, James promised. And Mrs. Sadler? Whatever they're planning, we'll stop it. You have my word. I ended the call and sat in my kitchen, lights off, watching moonlight paint shadows across walls. Daniel had helped me choose paint colors for 23 years of widowhood, of struggle, of sacrifice, all leading to this moment. My son wanted to take everything from me. My autonomy, my assets, my dignity, my home, my freedom. He'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd survived Daniel's death. I'd survived poverty and grief and decades of exhaustion. I'd raised 3 children alone and built a life from ruins. I was a survivor, and survivors don't go down without a fight. I met James Morrison at a diner 40 minutes from my house, someplace Marcus wouldn't accidentally see us. He was older than I expected, maybe early 60s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much human cruelty to be shocked by any of it. "Catherine sent me your file," he said, after we'd ordered coffee. "I've already started preliminary research. Mrs. Sadler, what I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear." I folded my hands on the table, steadying myself. I've heard plenty of difficult things lately. I can handle more. James pulled out a tablet. Swiping through documents, I couldn't quite see clearly. "Your son Marcus has been forging your signature on documents for at least 6 months, possibly longer. Bank statements show irregular transfers from your accounts. Small amounts initially, 500 here, 800 there. Amounts you might not notice immediately. But over time, they've escalated. In the past 2 months alone, $17,000 has been transferred from your savings to an LLC registered under Vanessa's maiden name." The diner blurred around me. $17,000. Gone. Stolen by my own child. "How?" My voice came out hoarse. "How did he access my accounts? Do you bank online?" "Yes. Marcus helped me set it up years ago when the bank started pushing everyone toward electronic statements. He said it would be easier for me." I stopped, understanding flooding in. "He knows my passwords." "Probably. Or he installed tracking software on your computer, or simply kept copies of your login information from when he helped you set up the accounts. The methods don't matter as much as the pattern. He's been systematically draining your resources while simultaneously building a case that you're financially incompetent." James swiped to another document. "The cabin's property taxes. You mentioned Marcus offered to handle them for you last spring." "Yes. I'd broken my wrist and was having trouble writing checks. He insisted he'd take care of everything, said I shouldn't worry about it. The taxes haven't been paid, 4 months overdue. If they're not paid within 60 days, the county can begin seizure proceedings." "But I gave him the money." "I know. I found the check you wrote him. $8,400. He deposited it, then transferred it to the same LLC that's been receiving your other funds." I couldn't breathe properly. The air in the diner had turned thick, suffocating. "He's stealing from me so I'll lose the cabin. Then he'll swoop in and—" "What? Buy it at auction?" "Possibly. Or more likely, he'll offer to save you by paying the back taxes himself, then pressure you to sign the property over to him as repayment. Either way, he gets the cabin without having to wait for inheritance." James leaned forward, his expression gentle, despite the brutal information he was delivering. "Mrs. Sadler, your son isn't just trying to take your property. He's systematically destroying your financial independence, so you'll have nowhere to go but wherever he decides to put you. And based on those recordings your granddaughter provided, his plan is to warehouse you in a state facility on Medicaid while he liquidates your assets." I stared at the coffee cup in front of me, watching steam rise and dissipate, thinking about all the times Marcus had called to check on me, all the times he'd offered to help manage my affairs, all the gentle suggestions that I was struggling, declining, losing my grip. Every interaction had been part of a long con. Every expression of concern had been manipulation. Every offer of help had been a trap. What do I do? The question came out small, defeated. I hated how I sounded, like the confused old woman Marcus wanted everyone to believe I was. James closed his tablet and met my eyes. "You fight back, but carefully. If Marcus knows you're on to him, He'll accelerate his timeline. Right now, he thinks he's in control, that you're confused and overwhelmed. We let him keep thinking that while we build a case. What kind of case? Criminal charges for elder financial abuse and fraud, civil suits to recover your stolen money, and most importantly, legal protections to prevent him from ever gaining power of attorney or conservatorship. We'll need to work quickly, but we can stop him. I thought about Emma's recordings, about Richard Pemberton's threats, about the family meeting where everyone I'd raised sat silent while Marcus tried to steal my life. How quickly? That depends on you. How good an actress are you, Mrs. Sadler? Because for this to work, you're going to have to play the role, Marcus expects, confused. Frightened, willing to do whatever he suggests. Can you do that? I thought about 23 years of playing strong when I felt broken, capable when I felt exhausted, hopeful when I felt defeated. I'd been acting my entire widowhood, pretending for my children's sake that I was fine, that we'd be okay, that their father's death hadn't destroyed me. One more performance, except this time, the act would be weakness instead of strength. Yes, I said. I can do that. James nodded slowly. Then here's what we're going to do. Over the next hour, he outlined the plan. I would call Marcus, apologize for my stubbornness at the family meeting, claim I'd been overwhelmed and frightened, but had time to think clearly. I'd express confusion about financial matters, maybe mention forgetting to pay a bill or two. I'd ask for his help, his guidance. I'd suggest meeting with Richard Pemberton again, but request 2 weeks to get my affairs in order and say goodbye to the cabin properly. 2 weeks for James to investigate everything. 2 weeks to secure my accounts, change passwords, document the theft. 2 weeks to build an unbreakable case. Meanwhile, I would become the confused old woman Marcus wanted me to be. I left the diner with James's card in my purse and a performance to deliver. That afternoon, I called Marcus. Mom? He sounded surprised I'd reached out. Hopeful. How are you feeling? I let my voice quaver slightly. I've been thinking about our meeting. I'm sorry I got upset. You're right. I have been more forgetful lately. It's frightening, Marcus. I don't want to admit I might need help, but maybe I do. The relief in his response was audible. Mom, I'm so glad you're being reasonable. This is for your own good. We just want you safe and cared for. I know, sweetheart. I know. Can we meet with that attorney again? I think I'm ready to discuss those documents. Of course. When works for you? I need some time. 2 weeks maybe, to get things organized. Say goodbye to the cabin properly. It's silly. I know, but that place means so much to me. I want to spend time there one last time before we figure out what comes next. Marcus agreed immediately. 2 weeks felt like an eternity to him, probably, but also proof that he'd won, that I was surrendering. Take all the time you need, Mom. We'll handle everything together. As a family, the words tasted like poison. After the call ended, I sat in silence, trembling with rage and fear, and something that felt almost like hope. Marcus thought he'd broken me. He'd read my submission as defeat. He'd forgotten that playing weak doesn't mean being weak. And he'd forgotten who taught him to think strategically, to plan ahead, to never give up, even when circumstances seemed impossible. I'd been surviving impossible circumstances since I was 45 years old. This was just one more battle. And this time, I was done losing. I know what you're thinking. How could a mother do this to her own son? But here's what I learned in those dark weeks. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you loved first. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted completely, I need you to do something for me. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about your own experience. Not for me, but for the others watching who feel alone in their pain. And please, stay with me. The hardest part is still coming. Behind the scenes, my life split into 2 performances. During the day, I was the confused, declining old woman Marcus expected, calling him with questions about bills I knew perfectly well how to pay, mentioning I'd forgotten appointments. I deliberately skipped, playing into every narrative he'd constructed. At night, I became someone else entirely. Catherine walked me through securing my finances. We opened new accounts at different banks, transferred my remaining savings, changed every password to combinations Marcus couldn't possibly guess. We documented every fraudulent transaction, built spreadsheets tracking the theft, prepared legal filings. James's investigation uncovered layers I'd never imagined. Marcus's LLC wasn't just receiving my stolen money, it was part of a larger financial house of cards. He and Vanessa were drowning in debt, having lived far beyond their means for years. The expensive house was mortgaged to the breaking point. Private school tuition for the children was months overdue. Credit cards were maxed. They'd taken out loans against his expected inheritance, loans now coming due. "Your son isn't just greedy," James explained during one of our secret meetings. "He's desperate. Financially, he's on the verge of collapse. The cabin isn't a windfall for him. It's a life raft." That knowledge should have made me feel sympathy, should have awakened the mother in me who'd always wanted to protect her children from consequences. Instead, I felt nothing but cold clarity. Marcus's financial problems weren't my fault or my responsibility. He'd made choices, lived recklessly, and now planned to sacrifice his own mother to save himself from his own mistakes. No, not happening. Emma continued providing recordings, each one more damning than the last. Vanessa laughing about how easy it will be to dump the old woman in state care once we have control. Marcus discussing which pieces of my jewelry to sell first. Rebecca's timid voice asking if this was really necessary, followed by Vanessa's sharp response. "Do you want your children to keep their school and lifestyle, or not?" Even my daughter's betrayal had a price tag. Her silence cost $30,000, her projected share of the cabin's sale. Tyler remained completely ignorant. His name never came up except in dismissive terms. "Don't tell Tyler anything until it's done," Marcus had said. "He's too soft-hearted. He'll try to talk Mom out of it." At least one of my children still saw me as human. During this time, I also discovered something that nearly broke me. James found records of Vanessa and Richard Pemberton, the attorney, checking into hotels together. Multiple times, going back almost a year. Credit card statements, security footage, irrefutable evidence. Vanessa was having an affair with the lawyer Marcus had hired to steal from me. They'd been planning this together, mixing legal expertise with intimate betrayal, probably laughing about it over pillow talk. When I told Catherine, she actually smiled. "Perfect. That's an ethical violation that'll get Pemberton disbarred, and it gives us leverage if we need it." But I didn't feel victorious. I felt sick. My family was rotting from the inside, corruption spreading through relationships I'd once believed were solid. 2 weeks passed in this strange double life. By day, confused old woman. By night, strategic warrior. I grew exhausted from the performance, from carrying rage I couldn't express, from pretending to love people who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle with assets. During one of my confused calls to Marcus, he mentioned Thanksgiving. "Mom, why don't we have dinner at the cabin this year? Kind of a final family gathering there before things change. We can all be together, make new memories." New memories. He meant one last manipulation, one final push to get my signature on transfer documents in a sentimental setting. I agreed, my voice trembling with false emotion. "That sounds beautiful, Marcus. Yes, let's do that. One last Thanksgiving, with all my children at the place their father built." After the call ended, I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I called James. "Thanksgiving at the cabin. He's going to make his final move." "Perfect," James said. "Then so will we." Catherine helped me prepare the legal counterstrike, documents restoring my accounts, evidence packages ready for the district attorney, protection orders preventing Marcus from accessing any of my assets. We lined everything up like dominoes, ready to fall in perfect sequence. I also made another call, one that made my hands shake as I dialed. "This is Melissa Harper with Channel 7 News." "Miss Harper, my name is Paula Sadler. I have a story about elder abuse you might be interested in, but you'll need to bring cameras to a cabin on Thanksgiving Day, and you'll need to be ready to record everything, because my family has no idea what's about to happen." She agreed. Of course she agreed. The story was perfect for ratings. Wealthy family destroying their own mother for inheritance money. caught on video during a holiday dinner. The night before Thanksgiving, I visited the cabin alone. Walked through rooms Daniel had built, touched wood he'd sanded, looked out windows he'd installed. I thought about the man who'd promised this place would outlast us, who'd built it with dreams of grandchildren and generations. "I'm going to protect what you built," I whispered to his memory. "I'm going to make sure they remember what family actually means. I promise." The next morning, I loaded my car with hidden cameras, with documents, with evidence that would destroy my son's plans and possibly his entire life. I drove toward the cabin, toward confrontation, toward the end of one story and the painful beginning of another. And for the first time in 23 years of widowhood, I felt something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Power. Not power over others, but power over my own life, my own choices, my own future. Marcus had tried to take everything from me. He was about to learn that some battles aren't worth starting, especially when you're fighting someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. Thanksgiving morning broke cold and gray, the kind of November day where the sky seems to press down against the earth, heavy with unspoken threats. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling through the plan, looking for weaknesses, for ways this could go wrong. But there was no turning back now. I arrived at the cabin at 9 a.m., hours before anyone else. The key stuck in the lock the way it always did, requiring that specific jiggle Daniel had shown me 30 years ago. Inside, the space smelled like wood smoke and memories, exactly as it should. I spent the morning cooking. Not because anyone deserved my food, but because the performance required it. Daniel's famous beef brisket. Slow roasted since dawn. Sweet potato casserole with pecan topping. Green beans almondine. Rolls from scratch. Pumpkin and apple pies cooling on the windowsill. Every dish was a memory. Every recipe a connection to the man who'd built these walls. Between cooking tasks, I positioned tiny cameras James had provided, one on the bookshelf, hidden behind Daniel's old fishing trophy, one above the fireplace mantel, tucked inside a decorative clock, 3 more in strategic corners, capturing every angle of the main room where dinner would happen. By noon, the cabin looked perfect. Table set with Daniel's mother's china, candles, waiting to be lit. Food warming in the oven, a beautiful family gathering, ready for beautiful family lies. My hands shook as I arranged the final place settings, not from fear anymore, from anticipation. Marcus and his family arrived first at 1:30. He'd brought Richard Pemberton, the attorney, just as I'd known he would. Vanessa wore an expression of barely contained glee, probably already spending my money in her mind. Their children followed. Sophia and Jackson subdued and uncomfortable, Emma ghostly pale, knowing what was coming. Emma caught my eye across the room. I gave her the smallest nod. "You're safe. I've got this." Rebecca and Brad arrived next. Rebecca's eyes red like she'd been crying. Tyler came last with his girlfriend Maria, both of them cheerful and oblivious, excited about family time. We settled around the table, the performance beginning, small talk about weather, about traffic, about nothing of consequence. Marcus kept checking his watch, impatient to move past pretense toward his real agenda. I served food, playing the doting mother, the confused old woman, grateful for her family's presence. Vanessa made cutting remarks about the dated cabin decor. Marcus barely touched his food, too focused on the briefcase, sitting by the door, full of documents waiting for my signature. After dessert, he made his move. "Mom, I think now would be a good time to handle that business we discussed." Richard brought the papers. Richard Pemberton pulled out his briefcase, producing a stack of documents I'd seen before. Power of attorney, property transfer, healthcare proxy, everything designed to strip away my autonomy and hand it to the man currently pretending to care about my welfare. "Let's just get this done, so we can all relax and enjoy the holiday," Marcus continued, his voice pitched for maximum false warmth. I picked up the pen he offered, my hand trembling. Not from confusion, from rage I'd been holding back for weeks. Then I set the pen down. "Before I sign," I said quietly, "I'd like to say something." The room went silent. Marcus frowned slightly but nodded, probably expecting a sentimental speech about family and gratitude. Instead, I began talking. 23 years ago, your father died building houses for other people's families while trying to secure ours. I became a widow at 45. I worked night shifts at County General for 18 years. I sold my mother's jewelry to pay for college tuition. I postponed surgery so Rebecca could have her dream wedding. I took out a second mortgage so Tyler could start his business. I sacrificed everything. My health, my savings, my future, because I believed that's what mothers do. We give until there's nothing left, and then we give more. Rebecca started crying softly. Tyler looked confused, sensing something wrong but not yet understanding what. I pulled out my phone, Emma's recordings queued and ready. And in return, you conspired to steal from me, to declare me incompetent, to warehouse me in a state facility while you liquidated my assets. I pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the cabin, cold and calculating. We build a pattern, establish decline, and then the competency petition becomes a formality. Vanessa's response. What about Tyler? Tyler's weak. We don't need him. Once we have power of attorney, we liquidate the cabin, split the proceeds between you, me, and Rebecca. More recordings followed, each more damning than the last. Plans to cut Tyler out entirely, discussion of which nursing home would be cheapest, while still looking respectable. Vanessa laughing about dumping me in state care. Rebecca sobbed openly now. Tyler's face had gone white, his eyes locked on Marcus with dawning horror. Maria gripped his hand, speechless. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against wooden floors. You had no right to record private conversations. And you had no right to steal from your mother. My voice came out steady, clear, strong. The confused old woman had disappeared, replaced by the person I'd always been underneath, a survivor who'd endured worse than this, and kept standing. I produced more evidence. Bank statements showing the stolen $17,000, records of unpaid property taxes, documentation of the LLC registered under Vanessa's maiden name, the one receiving my money. James's investigation reports, detailing months of systematic fraud. You forged my signatures, I continued, my voice cutting through Marcus's attempts to interrupt. You drained my accounts. You let my property taxes go unpaid, hoping the county would seize the cabin so you could buy it cheap at auction. You built a case for my incompetency, using lies and manipulation. You planned to take everything your father built and use it to save yourself from your own financial recklessness. Vanessa's mask shattered completely. She turned on Marcus, all pretense of partnership evaporating. You said this would be easy. You said she was too weak to fight back. Shut up, Marcus hissed. But the damage was done. I pulled out my final revelation, the one that would hurt him most. And you did all of this while your wife was having an affair with your attorney. Richard Pemberton, the man you trusted to help steal from me. He and Vanessa have been sleeping together for almost a year. Hotel receipts, security footage, credit card statements, all documented. Richard Pemberton went pale. Vanessa gasped, her eyes darting between Marcus and the attorney, looking for escape routes. Marcus turned to face his wife, his lawyer, the people he'd conspired with. Is that true? Neither answered. Their silence confirmed everything. Rebecca finally spoke through tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. I thought we were just helping you manage things. You thought you'd get your $30,000 and didn't ask too many questions, I said, my voice sharp. You chose money over your mother, Rebecca. You can't undo that truth with apologies. Tyler still hadn't moved, his face frozen in shock. Marcus, how could you do this? To her, to us. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. I've already contacted the district attorney's office. I have 3 independent psychiatric evaluations confirming I'm of completely sound mind. I've secured all my accounts and changed every password. I've prepared protection orders preventing any of you from accessing my assets. The property taxes on this cabin are paid in full as of yesterday morning, using money from accounts you can't touch. I stood, feeling strength I hadn't known. I still possessed. You wanted to take everything from me. My home, my dignity, my freedom. You wanted to erase me while I was still alive, turn me into an obstacle to remove rather than a person to love. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. I walked across the cabin and opened it, revealing exactly what I'd promised myself I'd deliver. Catherine stood there with James beside her. Behind them, two police officers in uniform, and behind them, Melissa Harper with her news crew, cameras already recording. "Mrs. Sadler," one of the officers said, his voice formal but not unkind, "we have some questions for your son." Marcus's face drained of all color. He looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time in months, and saw not a confused old woman, but the mother who'd raised him, who knew him, who just dismantled his entire scheme with the same strategic thinking she'd spent a lifetime teaching him. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I'm your son." "Yes," I said, my voice breaking on the word. "You are, and that's what makes this so unforgivable." The officers moved forward. Melissa Harper's camera captured everything. Marcus's denials growing weaker as evidence mounted. Vanessa's desperate attempts to blame others. Richard Pemberton's professional reputation crumbling in real time. Rebecca's tearful confession that she'd known about some of the plan, but stayed silent. Tyler pulled away from the table, disgusted and heartbroken, unable to even look at his older brother. And I stood in the cabin Daniel built, surrounded by the ruins of a family I'd spent 23 years trying to hold together, and felt something terrifying and liberating at once. This wasn't triumph. Victory tastes sweeter than this, I imagine. This was just survival. Ugly, painful, necessary survival. Outside, the gray November sky had begun to snow, fat flakes falling soft and quiet, covering everything in white. The news coverage spread faster than I'd imagined possible. By evening, the story was everywhere. Local businessman accused of defrauding elderly mother. By morning, it had gone viral. Family's Thanksgiving confrontation exposes elder abuse. Melissa Harper's report was devastating, thorough, sympathetic to me, and damning to Marcus. Clips of the recordings played on loop. Financial documents appeared on screen. Legal experts discussed the severity of elder financial abuse, the criminal charges Marcus and Vanessa faced, the ethical violations that would destroy Richard Pemberton's career. Marcus's employer suspended him within hours of the first broadcast. Vanessa's social media accounts exploded with vitriol from strangers. Richard Pemberton's law firm issued a statement announcing his immediate termination and their cooperation with disbarment proceedings. The community rallied around me in ways I'd never expected. Former patients from my nursing days reached out with support. Neighbors brought food, called to check on me, offered help. Strangers sent messages through the news station, sharing their own stories of family betrayal, thanking me for speaking up, telling me I'd given them courage. But I felt no triumph sitting in the cabin that night, alone, surrounded by the remains of our Thanksgiving disaster. Just exhaustion so profound, I could barely lift my arms. Emma called, crying. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what Dad did. I'm sorry for all of it. Sweetheart, none of this is your fault. You were the only one brave enough to help me. Don't you dare apologize for your father's choices. Are you okay?" I looked around the empty cabin, at Daniel's handiwork, at the family gathering space that had turned into a battlefield. "I don't know," I admitted. "Ask me again in a few months." Rebecca visited the next day, her face swollen from crying. She stood in my doorway like a supplicant, like she didn't know if she had permission to enter her own mother's home. "Come in," I said, my voice neutral. She sat on my couch, hands twisted together. "Mom, I don't know how to apologize for this. I don't know how to make it right." "You can't make it right. It is what it is. You chose money over me. That's a fact we both have to live with." "I was scared," Vanessa said. "If I didn't cooperate, they'd cut my children out of any future inheritance." She made it sound like you'd be fine, like we were just helping you manage things. "Don't insult me by pretending you believed that, Rebecca. You heard those recordings. You knew exactly what they were planning." She wept. I didn't comfort her. Some consequences require experiencing fully. "I'm going to therapy," she said eventually. "Brad and I both are. We're trying to figure out how I became someone who could betray her own mother for money. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I'm going to do the work to become someone worthy of forgiveness eventually. I softened slightly. I appreciate that. But forgiveness isn't something I can give you right now. Maybe someday. For now, I just need space. She nodded, accepted it, and left. Tyler came next, devastated. Mom, I had no idea. I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening. You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. You have a good heart. Don't let this destroy it. He held me, and I held him, and for a moment I remembered what family was supposed to feel like. The legal process ground forward. Marcus pleaded guilty to reduced charges, 3 counts of elder financial abuse, 2 counts of fraud. He received probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory restitution of all stolen funds, plus interest. He avoided prison, but his life collapsed anyway. His job gone. His marriage destroyed. Vanessa divorced him before the ink dried on his plea deal. His house went into foreclosure. His children pulled from private school, their comfortable life evaporating. Vanessa disappeared, remarried quickly to someone else, already spinning new lies in a different city. Richard Pemberton was disbarred and faced his own criminal charges. His legal career, built over decades, destroyed in weeks. I recovered most of my stolen money through restitution orders, though it came in slow monthly payments. The cabin remained in my name, protected by updated legal documents. Catherine helped me prepare. Documents that prevented any future manipulation, that required independent legal counsel for any changes, that ensured my children could only inherit equally or not at all. 6 months passed. Then a year. Life didn't return to normal. There was no normal to return to, but it found a new rhythm, a quieter, sadder, but more honest rhythm. I established a trust for my grandchildren's education, ensuring Emma, Sophia, Jackson, and Rebecca's children would never suffer for their parents' mistakes. I began volunteering with an elder advocacy organization, helping other seniors recognize financial abuse, connecting them with resources, giving my pain purpose. Emma spent weekends with me, helping maintain the cabin, learning to fish in the spots Daniel had favored, talking about her hopes for college and life beyond her fractured family. She'd become my closest companion, proof that sometimes the next generation can heal what the current one destroyed. Tyler visited weekly, bringing groceries, helping with repairs, just being present. He'd grown into the son I'd always hoped for. Not perfect, but honest, caring, reliable. Rebecca and I maintained a complicated relationship. Therapy had helped her, made her more honest about her choices and their consequences. We spoke regularly, carefully, both of us learning to communicate without the pretense that had poisoned our family. But some wounds need time. Maybe years, maybe forever. I sat on the cabin porch one evening in early autumn, watching sunset paint the lake gold and crimson. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke. The same breeze that had carried Daniel's laughter decades ago now carried only memory. I thought about the woman I'd been, the confused widow standing in Marcus's doorway holding unwanted food. I thought about the transformation from victim to survivor, the cost of standing up for myself, the family I'd lost in the process of saving my own life. And I thought about what I'd gained: self-respect, boundaries, the knowledge that love without respect isn't love at all, genuine relationships built on truth instead of obligation. A loon called across the water, its cry lonely and beautiful. I closed my eyes, feeling Daniel's presence not as grief anymore, but as foundation, as reminder that love once existed, even if it had been corrupted by those who should have protected it. I protected what you built, I whispered to the wind. Not just the cabin, our family's integrity, even when it cost me everything. The breeze picked up, cool against my skin, and I imagined it was Daniel answering. I know, I'm proud of you. I opened my eyes to find Emma walking up the path from the lake, her hair wind-blown, her face peaceful. Grandma, I caught 2 trout. Want to help me cook them? I stood, feeling the familiar ache in my back, the stiffness in my knees, all the ways 68 years had marked my body. But I was still standing, still here, still capable of teaching my granddaughter to cook fish, her great-grandfather's favorite way. Yes, I said, smiling, genuinely for the first time in months. Let's make dinner together. We walked toward the cabin, toward light spilling from windows, toward the small domestic peace I'd fought so hard to protect. Behind us, the sun finished setting, darkness spreading across the water. But inside, light persisted. 3 weeks after receiving Marcus's letter, I finally opened it. The envelope had sat in my kitchen drawer waiting, accusing me of cowardice every time I reached past it for scissors or measuring spoons. But some wounds need time before they can be examined. His handwriting looked shaky, nothing like the confident script I remembered from his childhood. The letter rambled for 2 pages, full of excuses and self-pity. Vanessa's influence, financial pressure, desperation, fear of failure, everything except genuine ownership of his choices. But near the end, he wrote something that pierced the armor I'd built. I forgot you were a person. Mom, I only saw you as an obstacle to what I wanted. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I remember now. I remember the night Dad died, and how you held us all together, even though you were breaking apart. I remember the time I had pneumonia, and you stayed awake for 3 days straight, terrified I'd stop breathing. I remember everything you sacrificed, and I destroyed it all because I was too weak to be the man you raised me to be. I read that paragraph multiple times, tears streaming down my face, soaking the paper until the ink began to blur. I thought about the little boy who'd held my hand crossing streets, who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd once made me a Mother's Day card that said, "You're my hero" in crayon. Where did that boy go? When did he become the man who tried to steal everything from me? The questions had no good answers. I pulled out stationery and wrote back brief and honest. Marcus, I don't forgive you yet. Maybe I never will, but I don't hate you either. You're still my son, and that's a truth I can't escape even when I want to. You destroyed my trust, but you didn't destroy me. That's the difference between us. I survived you. When you're ready to be honest about who you became and why, we can talk, not before. I deserve more than excuses. So do you. Mom. I mailed it the next morning, feeling lighter somehow. Not forgiven, not healed, but no longer carrying the weight of pretending I didn't have complicated feelings about the child who'd betrayed me. Love and anger could coexist. Family could be both precious and poisonous. Those truths weren't contradictions. They were just reality, messy and painful and human. 1 year after that terrible Thanksgiving, I woke early and drove to the cabin alone. The anniversary felt important somehow, a milestone worth marking privately before the day's planned gathering. The morning air was cold, frost glittering on fallen leaves. Inside, I built a fire in the fireplace. Daniel had constructed with his own hands, watching flames catch and spread, turning kindling into warmth. I'd spent the past year rebuilding my life in unexpected ways. The elder advocacy work had become my passion, my purpose, giving meaning to pain I might have just wallowed in otherwise. I'd helped 37 seniors recognize financial exploitation, connected them with legal resources, held their hands while they confronted their own families, reminded them they deserved dignity and autonomy. Each person I helped felt like redemption, proof that Marcus hadn't destroyed me, just changed my direction. Emma was thriving, spending summers at the cabin, learning everything I could teach her about resilience and boundaries and the difference between love and obligation. She'd grown 6 inches, become confident in ways she hadn't been before the confrontation, found her voice. Tyler had become my anchor, present and reliable, proof that I'd raised at least one child who understood what family actually meant. His landscaping business was doing well. He'd proposed to Maria. They'd asked if they could hold their wedding at the cabin next summer. I'd said yes immediately, imagining something beautiful rising from the ashes. Rebecca and I were healing slowly, building a new relationship on honesty instead of pretense. She'd completed a year of therapy, done the hard work of examining who she'd become and why. We spoke weekly now, carefully, both of us navigating the complicated territory of damaged love, trying to repair itself. It would never be what it was, but maybe it could be something different, something more authentic. Marcus sent occasional letters. I read some, left others unopened, responded only when I felt strong enough. He was working at a community college, teaching financial planning to first-generation students. trying to rebuild a life from ruins. His children visited him on weekends in the small apartment he could barely afford. We hadn't spoken in person since Thanksgiving. Maybe we never would. Maybe that was okay. I'd also started a scholarship fund in Daniel's name, helping children from single-parent households afford college, turning my pain into something that helped others. The first recipient was a 17-year-old girl whose father had died in a workplace accident, whose mother was working 3 jobs to keep food on the table. When I told her she'd received the scholarship, she'd wept in my arms. "You're giving me a future," she'd sobbed. I didn't think I'd get to go to college. "Someone gave me a chance once," I'd replied. "This is me passing it forward." That moment had felt like the first real peace I'd experienced since Daniel's death. Purpose beyond survival, meaning beyond maintenance. Now, sitting in the cabin watching fire dance in the hearth, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not healing exactly. I'd never fully heal from what Marcus did. But acceptance. The situation was what it was. My family was broken in ways that might never fully repair. And I'd survived anyway. That afternoon, guests began arriving. Tyler and Maria first, bringing food and laughter. Rebecca and her children, tentative but present. Emma, of course, who'd become my shadow and my salvation. Catherine and James, who'd helped me fight back and remained close friends. A smaller gathering than last year's disaster, but healthier. Honest, real. We cooked together, the kitchen filling with warmth and conversation, and the smell of roasting turkey. Emma told stories about her new school. Tyler described his wedding plans. Rebecca's daughter showed me drawings she'd made, asking if I'd hang them at the cabin. "Of course, sweetheart. This place needs more art." As evening approached, I found myself standing at the window, watching the lake. The same view Daniel had loved. The same sunset he'd watched while building these walls. "Are you okay, Grandma?" Emma had appeared beside me, her hand finding mine. "Yes," I said, and meant it. "Yes, I think I am." Dinner was boisterous and beautiful, nothing like the tense performance of last year. We laughed. We argued about politics and sports, and nothing important. We told stories about Daniel, keeping his memory alive. After the meal, I walked down to the lake alone, needing a moment of solitude. The water reflected dying sunlight, gold and crimson spreading across the surface like paint. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, terrified, humiliated, standing in Marcus's doorway holding unwanted food. I thought about everything I'd lost, the illusion of a perfect family, the naive belief that love alone could protect me, the son I thought I knew. But I also thought about what I'd gained: self-respect, boundaries, the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, genuine relationships built on truth rather than obligation. A cool breeze rippled across the water. I closed my eyes, feeling Daniel's presence the way I always did, not as a ghost, but as a foundation, a reminder of the love that built this place. "I protected what you built, Daniel," I whispered. "Not just the cabin, our family's integrity, even when it cost me everything." The breeze picked up, warm despite the season, and I chose to believe it was his answer. I turned back toward the cabin, where light spilled from windows and laughter echoed across the water. Inside, my imperfect reconstructed family waited, Tyler setting up a board game, Maria making coffee, Rebecca helping Emma clean up dishes, children running between rooms chasing each other. Not the family I'd imagined, not the family I'd sacrificed everything to build, but a family nonetheless. Honest, resilient, real. I'm 68 years old, a widow, a mother to broken and healing children, a grandmother to kids who will grow up knowing their grandmother fought for herself, stood her ground, refused to be erased. I'm a survivor of betrayal, who chose dignity over revenge, truth over silence, self-preservation over martyrdom. And as I walked back toward the warmth and noise of my imperfect reconstructed family, Paula Sadler finally allowed herself to smile. Not because everything is fixed, it isn't, and maybe it never will be, but because I'm still standing, still fighting, still here. And sometimes, that's the greatest victory of all. I want to tell you something. Before I finish this story, when I started speaking out about what happened, I was terrified. I thought people would judge me for exposing my own son, for refusing to just keep it in the family, like so many people told me to do. But the messages I received, from daughters and sons, and mothers and fathers who'd lived through similar betrayals, they saved me. They reminded me I wasn't alone. So if my story touched you in any way, if it made you feel seen or understood, or less alone in your own struggles, please do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, because I want to keep sharing stories that matter, stories that give voice to the pain we're often told to hide. Leave a like if you believe that speaking truth, even painful truth, is worth it, and most importantly, comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've faced similar betrayals. Tell me how you survived. Let's build a community of survivors, of people who refuse to stay silent, because that's how we heal. Not by hiding our scars, but by showing them to each other and saying, I understand, you're not alone.